Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take a whole stack of sources, cut through all the noise, and really get straight to the insights you need to be truly well-informed.
Exactly.
Today, we want you to think about something pretty profound, a connection that might just change how you see the world around you. What if the air we breathe, the oceans rising, the climate shifting everywhere,
Yeah.
what if these aren't just, well, natural things happening?
Okay.
What if they're the direct results of human decisions, choices made in boardrooms, on battlefields, in factories, really over the last 100 years or so?
That's a really powerful way to frame it, isn't it? We talk about climate change a lot as something happening now, something that's really ramped up recently.
Right, like it's a modern problem.
Exactly. But what this deep dive is going to show is that the roots, they go much, much deeper, right into the fabric of modern history itself.
Okay.
So we'll be exploring how these huge events and trends in the 20th century, things we usually study for, politics or social changes.
Yeah, the stuff you learn in history class.
Precisely. How those same events left this massive, often overlooked mark on our planet. It's not just about nations rising and falling. It's about the real environmental cost of what we call progress.
That's a really key point. So our mission today is to uncover exactly how modern history didn't just shape societies, but actually engineered the climate crisis we're dealing with right now.
Engineer, yeah.
We're going to connect things that might seem totally separate, like industrial booms, world wars, economic policies, and show you, step by step, how they built the foundation for today's environmental problems. Think of this as your shortcut to understanding the real environmental legacy of the 20th century. We want to make it clear and accessible no matter your background.
And we're pulling this all together from a really solid set of sources, especially leaning on insights from a work called Modern History's Environmental Legacy.
Right.
This material lets us trace these connections pretty carefully, showing how human actions in the past didn't just change society, they directly changed our atmosphere, our ecosystems, the planet's stability. It's a sobering look at how deeply intertwined our history and our environment really are. Often tragically so.
Okay, so let's set the scene then.
Yeah.
To really get this, we need to go back to the late 19th, early 20th centuries. The Second Industrial Revolution.
A truly transformative time.
Totally. Picture it. Electricity lighting up cities, changing night into day. The first cars starting to appear, replacing horses. Huge steel buildings, reshaping skylines.
Yeah.
It must have felt like pure progress, right? A real triumph.
Absolutely. To many people, it absolutely did.
But what were the hidden costs, the things being written into the planet's future right then?
That's the crucial question. Because yes, on the surface, it was this amazing era of innovation, especially in the West. Unbelievable growth.
Yeah.
But what often gets missed in that celebration is how this era, while boosting human capability, also laid down the blueprint for massive long-term climate impact.
Okay, the blueprint.
Yeah, it set up the systems, the infrastructure, the dependencies that would, eventually change our global climate. It wasn't just what we built, it was how we built it. And crucially, what we built it with, what energy source.
Right.
This period wasn't just about cool inventions. It embedded this philosophy of just relentless expansion, fueled by what seemed like endless, cheap fossil energy.
And the how and what are really key here.
Yeah.
Electricity, oil, mass production.
Yeah.
What made this different from, say, the first industrial revolution? How did these specific things crank up our environmental footprint like never before?
That's a great point. Before this time, industry was, mostly localized. Smaller scale, often powered by water wheels, maybe burning wood, some coal, but not on the same massive scale.
Okay.
But suddenly you get alternating current, huge power grids. You can power whole cities, factories on a scale that was unimaginable before.
Right. Centralized power.
No, exactly. Then the internal combustion engine, running on petroleum, transforms transport, industry, and mass production techniques like Ford's assembly line. Suddenly, you can make stuff in quantities that were just mind-boggling. And that needs immense energy at every single step. Think about the energy packed into coal and oil compared to wood or water. It's like we found this treasure chest of ancient sunlight, millions of years old, and just started prying it open as fast as we could.
And you could see the change happening, right? It wasn't subtle. You'd have factories just pouring out thick black coal smoke, skies turning hazy.
Yeah, absolutely visible.
And cars. Going from a rare sight to being everywhere, pushing horses off the streets, changing how cities were even designed.
Yeah.
And these huge steel cities going up, every skyscraper needing tons of energy to make the steel, build the structure, all powered by carbon, basically. It was the start of the oil economy, the petro economy.
And the impact, when you quantify it, is just Staggering. Our sources point to this really alarming number. Between 1900 and 1950, global CO2 emissions went up by 400%.
400%.
In just 50 years.
400%. Let that sink in. As the world grabbed onto these new technologies, these new ways of making things, we quadrupled the rate we were pumping CO2 into the air compared to the start of the century.
Oh.
That's not just a statistic. It's a clear sign of how deeply this new industrial model was embedding itself. It kicked off an atmospheric change that would take decades to become really obvious, when the greenhouse gases built up enough to actually change temperatures significantly.
Okay.
It was the moment human impact went from being mostly local to truly planetary, changing the whole atmosphere.
So what's the takeaway for us listening today? It means we have to grapple with this paradox, right? The very things that built our modern world, things we still use every day, lights, cars, cheap goods, were also, maybe without anyone realizing it fully, setting the stage for a warmer planet, literally baking the planet, like you said.
Those choices back in the early 20th century weren't just about economics. They set us on these long-term environmental paths that we're still dealing with. The industrial spark lit this very long, slow-burning fuse, a carbon legacy.
You've nailed it. That period set the precedent that growth and tech advancement, especially as consumerism started taking off, could just happen without really thinking about the environmental fallout.
Right. Out of sight, out of mind.
Pretty much. The costs were invisible or externalized or just seen as, well, the price of progress. It was the birth of our carbon world, shaping everything from how we build cities to how we get around, how we power everything. Fossil fuels became linked with prosperity, with power.
Okay, let's jump forward then. A few decades later, a period everyone knows for different reasons, World War II. Usually we think of WWII, its heroism, tragedy, huge geopolitical shifts, the human costs, immense suffering. But what if we told you that WWII was also a massive turning point for environmental destruction? We need to look past the usual stories and see how it accelerated environmental damage on a global scale like never before.
It's a really important reframing. The war effort, for all the countries involved, demanded production on an absolutely immense scale, unprecedented.
More than the Industrial Revolution.
Way more, concentrated in just a few years. It wasn't just tanks and planes, it was getting the raw materials for them. Steel, needing huge amounts of coal and iron ore. Synthetic rubber, needing oil. Oil itself, massive quantities for fuel. Chemicals for explosives, new materials.
Right.
The world's industrial output during those war years, 39 to 45, just dwarfed anything before it. And this supercharged production, it had an immediate severe environmental cost. It was like an industrial machine running flat out with zero thought for the exhaust fumes, literally and figuratively.
And the impact was real physical damage to ecosystems. You mentioned forests being cleared.
Yeah, entire forests across Europe, Asia, North America, cleared at incredible speed, not for towns, but for war materials. Ships, fuel, barracks, rifle stocks, trenches.
Wow.
The amount of timber needed was huge, led to massive deforestation, soil erosion, and the oceans. They became dumping grounds. Oil spills from sunken ships, debris from battles, waste from military operations, just huge pollution. Land and sea, the scale of direct destruction was enormous. And the war brought something entirely new environmentally, radioactive contamination on a planetary scale.
The nuclear age.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Manhattan Project, developing nuclear weapons, it didn't just create a terrifying new political reality, it fundamentally changed parts of the Earth itself. For the first time, humans deliberately spread long-lasting radioactive pollution into ecosystems.
Right. Things like strontium-90.
Strontium-90, cesium-137, isotopes with half-lives of decades. Spread by atmospheric tests, getting into the food chain, accumulating in plants, animals, people, across huge distances. It was a completely new kind of environmental threat, something we're still dealing with today. A human intervention on an almost geological level.
That's truly sobering.
Okay.
The immediate scars and these new invisible ones. But what happened when the war ended? Did that giant industrial machine just switch off?
That's the crucial thing. It didn't switch off, not at all. In fact, quite the opposite happened. Instead of winding down, the production machine, supercharged for war, just pivoted. It exploded into this sustained economic boom, especially in the West.
A post-war boom.
Exactly. All that infrastructure, the factories, the skilled workers that were geared for war, they turned incredibly fast to making things for peacetime, for consumers, driven by pent-up demand, government spending. It was an economic expansion like nothing seen before.
So, connecting back, how did a war, a human conflict, end up having such a huge environmental legacy? It seems like a jump.
Well, WWII showed what humanity could do in terms of mobilizing resources and changing the environment very quickly. It proved that our industrial power, if unleashed without thinking about the environment, could reshape the planet itself, not just borders. It kind of normalized environmental strain as just a byproduct of progress or necessity, especially in a crisis. The war, ironically, created a template for the global industrial expansion that followed, setting a new baseline for how much we consumed and polluted.
So after the war, we hit this period, say 1945 to 1970, the post-war boom. Often romanticized, right? The birth of this new way of life. Expansion, more money for many people, consumerism taking off.
Yeah, the American dream narrative.
Exactly. Owning a home, comfort. And that idea spread fast across the Western world, setting a new standard for what a good life looked like.
That's spot on. It was a time of huge societal change, marked by these symbols of progress that became totally central to modern life. But they all had hidden environmental price tags. Well, massive highway systems being built everywhere. Connecting places, yes, but also cutting through ecosystems, needing tons of asphalt and concrete.
Suburbs sprawling out.
Right. People moving out of cities, needing more land per person, driving more. Plastic becoming the miracle material, cheap, versatile, used for everything.
Oh yeah, plastic everywhere.
Which created this whole new persistent waste problem. Air travel becoming more common, shrinking the world but guzzling fossil fuels. And underneath it all was this core value, convenience. Everything had to be easier, faster.
And what powered all that convenience and growth? Oil.
Oil was absolutely king. The global economy, especially the consumer side, became totally hooked on it. Cars were central, not just for getting to work, but for freedom, status, leisure.
The whole car culture.
Exactly. And everything built around it, gas stations everywhere, drive-thrus, huge parking lots eating up land, more and more roads. This reliance on oil and on plastic made from oil just massively increased how many resources we used. Our dreams got tied directly to fossil fuels.
It's striking when you put the dream next to the reality, isn't it? The nice house, the car, but behind it.
Behind it was this accelerating cycle of extraction and expansion. Forests cleared for suburbs, for farming, minerals mined for appliances, gadgets, oil drilled relentlessly. And the planet became the dumping ground. Industrial waste in rivers, mountains of plastic trash building up in landfills, eventually getting into the oceans. It was a choice, mostly unconscious maybe, to build convenience on a foundation that just couldn't last forever.
And the numbers. They really tell the story. Our sources say that by the 1970s, the amount of carbon in the atmosphere had doubled compared to pre-industrial times.
Doubled.
Think about that. It took maybe 200 years from the start of the first industrial revolution to double CO2.
Yeah.
This post-war boom did it again, or contributed massively to it, in just a few decades.
It was exponential growth, an unprecedented increase in our planetary footprint in a very short time.
So we need to connect those dots, right? The dream of a better, easier life, inadvertently creating this climate time bomb.
Exactly. It shows how deeply our values, especially around growth and consumption, can translate into huge environmental burdens. The desire for ease and stuff, plus cheap fossil fuels, created this feedback loop. Consume more, make more, extract more, pollute more. And the result was this massive, rapid change to the Earth's atmosphere. And most people, even policymakers, didn't really see it or understand it at the time. Kind of ironic, the search for ease leading to such complex future problems.
Okay, shifting gears slightly, but staying global.
Yeah.
The Cold War. Decades of tension, the U.S. versus the Soviet Union. We think of the arms race, spies, geopolitics.
Big standoff.
Right. But it wasn't just about weapons, was it? It was a race for influence, for economic power, for ideology, and that race fueled rapid industrialization and resource grabbing all over the world.
Absolutely. The ideological fight became an environmental one almost by default. The casualties were huge, even without direct superpower fighting.
How so?
Take nuclear testing, the U.S., the Soviets, others. Hundreds of tests, atmospheric, underground, through the 50s, 60s, beyond.
Right, the fallout scares.
Exactly. Those tests, especially the ones in the air, contaminated huge areas. Pacific islands like Bikini Atoll, parts of Siberia, Nevada, lasting radioactive contamination. And it wasn't just local. Fallout spread on wind currents globally, got into ecosystems, the food chain, long-term consequences we still monitor.
And it wasn't just bombs, right? You mentioned infrastructure projects.
Massive projects driven by national pride and strategic goals. Mega dams were a big one. I think Aswan High Dam in Egypt, Three Gorges in China later on.
Symbols of power.
Definitely. Designed to control water, generate power, show national might. But they often wiped out ecosystems, changed river flows completely, hit biodiversity hard, disrupted cycles downstream for huge distances, huge ecological footprints, often glossed over in the name of progress. And then there were the proxy wars, where the superpowers backed different sides in regional fights.
Vietnam, for example.
Vietnam is a key example highlighted in our sources. Deforestation surged there, not just as a byproduct, but sometimes deliberate tactics. Agent Orange destroying jungle cover and crops, clearing huge areas for bases, roads, airstrips.
Wow.
So you see a direct link. Geopolitical conflict, even indirect, leading to severe land damage, habitat loss, long-term environmental and health problems, changing landscapes, even regional climates.
And all through this Cold War period, environmental rules, they weren't really a thing, were they?
Largely absent. In the race for dominance, industrial, military, ideological, Katawani, the environment was way down the priority list, if it was on the list at all.
So no checks and balances.
Pretty much. This regulatory vacuum allowed huge damage to happen without much consequence. We didn't have the laws, the public awareness, or even the scientific understanding back then to really mitigate the harm effectively. No global body holding nations accountable environmentally.
So the big picture here is kind of ironic, isn't it? The Cold War stayed cold between the superpowers. No direct nuclear war, thankfully.
Right.
But its side effects, the competition, the industrial race, the proxy conflicts, they actually caused the planet to heat up, literally.
That's a perfect way to put it. The drive for victory came at this huge, often hidden environmental cost. It accelerated the trends from the earlier Industrial Revolution and WWII. Shows how even non-shooting conflicts can wreck the environment through all the activity supporting them, fundamentally changing Earth systems.
Okay, moving into the later 20th century. By the 80s and 90s, things were shifting a bit in the West, right? People were starting to notice the pollution.
Definitely. Public awareness was growing, environmental movements were gaining steam, air and water quality in many industrial areas were becoming serious health issues. Real public pressure for change was building.
So facing tighter rules and higher costs at home, what did companies and countries start doing?
They found let's call it an economically attractive solution. They effectively started exporting their environmental problems.
Exporting pollution.
Essentially, yes. The drivers were clear. Cheaper labor in developing nations, absolutely. But crucially, much weaker environmental laws and enforcement. So factories that were getting expensive to run in the West due to regulations and wages started moving, relocating on a massive scale, often welcomed by host governments eager for investment. It wasn't just about efficiency. It was about pushing costs, especially environmental costs, onto places where you could pollute more cheaply, sometimes called carbon leakage. The emissions don't stop, they just move.
And this wasn't just a few companies, it was a big trend.
Oh yeah, a huge global trend, changed the whole map of world industry. Our sources highlight specific areas that became the new industrial hubs, taking on that environmental load.
Where are we talking about?
Places like China, India, large parts of Southeast Asia became the world's factories, making goods for everyone else. Now this definitely brought economic growth there, jobs, development, but it also brought pollution on an unprecedented scale. Often catastrophic levels. Severe air pollution, choking cities, water contamination, toxic waste piling up.
So back in the West, it looked like things were getting cleaner.
Exactly. It created this illusion of progress. Western countries could point to cleaner air, cleaner rivers at home, show their citizens they were making improvements.
But the reality...
The reality was outsourced destruction. The carbon emissions, the toxic sludge, the smog. It didn't vanish from the planet, it just moved. So while the West might have breathed easier, pollution skyrocketed in these developing regions, hitting local people, ecosystems, public health incredibly hard. It fundamentally shifted who bore the burden of global production.
So for you listening, thinking about our global economy, this really shows how interconnectedness, without strong universal environmental rules or ethics, can just shuffle the problem around, not solve it. It created these huge global environmental inequalities. Cheap stuff here often meant severe pollution and health costs somewhere else. It made environmental responsibility feel fragmented, not shared, and we still feel those effects today.
That's a critical point. It also kind of blurred who was responsible, didn't it? If you're buying cheap goods in the West, the environmental footprint of making them is happening thousands of miles away. easy to ignore, to not connect your consumption to the consequence.
Mm-hmm.
This globalized model created this really complex web of impacts. Makes the problem harder to solve when the pollution source is so far from the consumer and the regulations might be weakest right where the pollution is happening. A systemic disconnect between cause and effect.
Okay. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground, from those first smokestacks through wars, booms, Cold War tensions, globalization. Let's bring it all together now. The main point we need to hammer home is this. None of the environmental crises we face today just appeared out of thin air.
Exactly. They didn't come from nowhere. They're not random, not sudden.
When you see the news about the extreme heat waves,
Breaking records everywhere, straining power grids,
or the oceans rising, threatening coasts,
displacing communities,
glaciers melting away, polar ice shrinking,
changing landscapes forever,
species going extinct at alarming rates.
biodiversity crisis.
These aren't separate issues.
Right.
They're the direct, undeniable results of the decisions made, the systems built, the priorities chosen throughout the 20th century we just walked through.
Every single one of those current crises has a direct line back through this history.
It's powerful when you connect it like that. Think about specific choices. The big one, deciding to rely so heavily on burning coal and oil.
Yeah, the fossil fuel path.
It wasn't just a choice made once. It was reinforced over and over through
Yeah.
wars, booms, tech advances. We could have invested more in alternatives, maybe, but we consistently took the path of cheap, easy, energy-dense fossil fuels.
And that was tied to another consistent choice. Prioritizing economic growth above almost everything else, above ecological balance. For most of the 20th century, the main idea was grow the economy. That's the goal. Environmental damage. We'll either ignore it, downplay it, call it a necessary trade-off, or maybe we just didn't know enough then. That thinking got baked into policies, business practices, our whole idea of progress.
Right. Regulations often came way too late or were too weak.
Or non-existent for long periods.
And then there's us, society, valuing immediate convenience over long-term consequences.
Oh, yeah.
Single-use plastics, sprawling suburbs, needing cars for everything,
Yeah.
getting things easily and quickly, often won out over thinking about the planet. Even when scientists started raising red flags, it's like a collective inertia.
So this is the so what moment for everyone listening. You need to understand, modern history didn't just influence things. It actively engineered the climate crisis we have now.
Engineered, yeah.
Knowing this isn't about blaming the past in a way that makes us feel helpless. It's about understanding why things are the way they are. With total clarity, it makes the problem personal, immediate, because human choices, our choices collectively over generations, created this.
It's on us.
It's a human-made reality, not some unavoidable natural disaster. The science is clear, obviously, but adding this historical context just gives it incredible depth, doesn't it?
It really does. Now, okay, that sounds potentially overwhelming, like we're carrying this huge historical burden.
It can feel that way.
But here's where we pivot, the hopeful turn. Because understanding the cause gives us power. Here's the hard truth, maybe, but also the empowering one. We caused the problem.
And that is the absolute key to taking action. Because if we caused it...
Then we can fix it.
Exactly. This isn't something beyond our control. It's human-made, which means human agency matters. We have the capacity, the smarts, and arguably the moral duty to change course. We actually have the innovation, the technology is developing rapidly, and hopefully the collective will to do things differently.
And history becomes this amazing tool, right? Like a mirror.
A very powerful mirror.
When we study how we got here, look at the mistakes made during those big historical moments we discussed. We don't just see what went wrong. We see how not to do it again.
Right. It shows us the turning points where different decisions could have been made, where foresight could have been used, where short-term thinking maybe shouldn't have won out over long-term health. It's like a blueprint for doing better.
That's a great way to put it. And it feels like now is another one of those big turning points, doesn't it? Like the 1940s gearing up for war production, or the 1970s when environmental awareness really started kicking in after seeing that carbon doubling.
It really does feel like an inflection point. But the difference now is we know so much more. We have far better technology. We have a global understanding of the consequences that people back then just didn't have. We really do know better now.
So the big question we want to leave you with to think about today is this. Are we going to keep making the same mistakes? Keep prioritizing short-term gains, immediate convenience, outsourced problems? Or are we finally going to look this history square in the face, learn its lessons, and actually write a new chapter, a sustainable one, for us, for the planet?
And that perspective hopefully inspires not just, vague hope, but a real sense of shared responsibility and agency. Knowing the past isn't just academic. It's the essential first step to building a different future. It shows our actions matter. They mattered then, they matter now. Our choices today can genuinely change where we end up tomorrow. History's lessons aren't just warnings, they're detailed guides for a better path.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, just hold on to this idea. History isn't just stories about people. Kings, queens, wars, economies.
It's more than that.
It's the reason the air is warmer, the oceans are higher, the weather is wilder. It's the story of how our choices literally shape the physical world we live in.
We usually think of history shaping humanity, our societies, politics, cultures. But what we've seen today is that it also fundamentally shaped the planet.
Yeah.
Every decision, every war, every invention of the last century left its mark on the Earth's systems, geology, atmosphere, life itself, creating the reality we're dealing with right now.
So, as you go about your day, maybe think about which part of this history hit home for you. Was it that 400% CO2 jump early on?
Or the dawn of the nuclear age's contamination?
The doubling of carbon in the boom years?
A Cold War's hidden environmental costs?
Or maybe that idea of outsourced pollution?
Just reflect on the incredible power of human decisions over time and how knowing this connection has to inform what we do now, because the story of modern history is the story of our environment. It's still being written.
Right now.
And the biggest question, the one that hangs over everything, is whether the next chapter we write is one the Earth can actually live with, can thrive within, because, really, the truth is right there in the timeline.